Hi, everyone, and welcome to another Scientology Outside of the Church podcast. This is season 11, episode 25. I can't believe it's 25 already on season 11. But here we are on Thursday, August the 28th, 2025. And it's been an interesting few weeks politically and geoeconomically, and things are getting even more interesting by the minute. So I thought it an interesting topic to talk about the incredibly divisive subject of politics and what independent Scientology and LRH's viewpoint on politics are. And this is going to get juicy, and we aren't taking any political sides or anything like that. We're looking at it more from a macro viewpoint than we are anything else. So don't get your panties in a bunch if you're listening. So
Don't
we
shoot the
will
messenger.
don't shoot the messenger is the idea, but it's going to be on politics. So first off, it'd be important to note that LRH has a political scale. And that political scale is based off of a reference from 17 March 1969. So that would have been 56 years ago. And LRH says that there is a scale that was taken from Excalibur. Excalibur was an unpublished book written in the very late 1930s. Let me repeat that. The very late 1930s. Only fragments of it remain. By placing it against the tone scale developed at the end of 1950, certain political philosophies are better estimated. By then looking up these tone characteristics in Science of Survival, much can be learned. And the ideologies are thus made easier to predict or handle. And at the top of this scale, what do you think, Quentin? I'm here with Quentin Stroud. Arthur's on his way to Quentin's at the moment, so all the whole gang is here. And barring any internet difficulties for Arthur in his Uber, uh, well, we'll all be participating. So back to the politics scale based off of LRH's reference of the same name. Quentin, should we go from the bottom to the top or the top to the bottom? Probably from the bottom to the top, don't you think?
I, I think the top to the bottom
Top to the bottom.
because let me say this when we look at this scale, and we're going to go over it in a second, but when we look at this scale, we're talking about how when you look at a nation, and I want you to spot, if you can, wherever you are listening, because we have listeners all over the world, I want you to spot where our political system, if you will, our governments are on this scale. Again, we're not taking any sides. We're just looking at it as an observation. And when we look at this thing per LRH, like, let's see where the nation lands, where the government lands, and then what's going to happen, because he goes into a little bit in depth into what's happening with them as they interact with one another. So at the top, we have the Republic. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, Republic 3.0 is
Yes.
where it's at in comparison to the tone scale. And 3.0 is where on the tone scale, Quentin? I don't have one in front of me at the moment. Do you?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Where's Republic
No,
on the
I'm sorry.
tone?
My internet dropped out. Say that again.
Okay, where's Republic on the tone scale? 3.0 is what on the tone scale? I don't have one
3.0
in
is
front of me.
cheerfulness. 3.0 is
Cheerfulness.
cheerfulness. You got cheerful, happy people, living life, cooking apple pies and sitting them in windows and whatnot. You got you got you got people being safe and men marrying and women being given in marriage. The whole bit.
So everybody's cheerful. It's not something you see very often, but it does happen, and a republic is there. And then democracy is at 2.5.
Hmm.
Social democracy is at 2.0. Fascism is at 1.5, which it was easy, anger. Communism 1.1, covert hostility, and then anarchism at zero point 0 on the tone scale. He goes on to say the cycle of a nation goes on descending spiral down this scale. Let me repeat that. The cycle of a nation goes on a descending spiral down this scale. Those two tones apart are not likely to fight. Those a tone apart fight seldom. Those a half tone apart are in continual conflict. As this was worked out before World War II, it is quite remarkable to see how true it is held, and how each one has taken something from its neighbors. I will not go into what lies above democracy, except that man is trying with his ideologies to solve mainly the problem of succession. History has seen other government forms work far more ideally than those named, but in none of these could one guarantee succession of the beneficial rule. Thus, adherents to all forms of ideology can be made to agree that benign monarchy, in quotes, is an excellent form of government. But they discard it because a truly good benign monarch is not necessarily succeeded by one in the next reign. So you could have a benign monarch who's a really cool guy, and he gets a lot of stuff done, which there have been some in history, at least recent history. Few governments exist in pure form. He says, note, there are no major governments at this writing in 1969 above social democracy or the tone level of 2.0. So that gives us a little bit of a framework. And this was 56 years ago that he wrote this reference. And we found a really, really good reference from, was it 1957? I think. Let's see here. And boy,
Yep, it was a lecture given in 1957, December 30th, called in the Ability Congress, creating a third dynamic, United Survival Action Clubs. And so he talks about this, but I want to go into this real quick, because when he talked about this political tone scale, or this political scale rather, he talked about republic being at the top, which is at 3.0, and a republic is a form of government where supreme power is held by the people and their elected representatives rather than by a monarch or hereditary aristocracy. Okay, so a republic means that the people that are actually elected are actually representing the interests of the people. This is important. The people that are actually elected are actually representing the interests of the people. And I think this is really interesting because we think we think we live in a democratic republic, right? Where people are elected and they're actually the interests are actually representing the interests of the people. But what happens when a bulk of money goes towards military funding, or a bulk of money goes towards the FDA and drugs being approved in our society, or certain foods being released into the society that's making people sick, and carcinogens and stuff like that? Are the interests of the people actually being represented by those that the people elected? That's why that's how you know that you're not operating in a republic. Okay? You're not operating in a republic if anything, it says supreme power is held by the people. So if anything is being done against the interests of the people, you've automatically dropped tone. You've automatically fallen out of that category. And the people are not cheerful. The people are not happy. The people are not, walking around in bliss and joy because they're not actually getting what they need and want.
Right, because there's a lack of
Isn't this something?
representation due to vested interest.
Exactly. And so the parties, the powers that be are entering into the government, and whether it be lobbying, whether it be, like you said, what do they call them, interest groups, certain interest groups and stuff like that, where they come in and they say, hey, we'll throw you guys $1 million if you represent what we want to be represented in this bill or whatever. Who read the bill? Who knows, right? The bill passes, and now a ton of money or a ton of resources or a ton of whatever gets shifted over to this political interest group, right? And therefore, you're not standing in a true republic because your interests are not really being represented. I just want to make that point.
Right. And and you and I come from the United States and Arthur comes from Australia. And both of those countries are suffering from the same vested interests from the representatives. And the representatives is the executive branch. In the United States, you've got your House and you've got your Senate, and then you have the quote unquote commander in chief. And what we're seeing right now in present time on the 28th of August, 2025, is what is it? A republic, a democracy, a social democracy, fascism, communism? Well, I guess it's a matter of opinion, but the interest is in ultimately power. Power equals, either ego or personal interest financially or bias due to, as he stated, ideological. And I think that's from what we're seeing, at least over here on this side of the Atlantic in South Africa, what I'm seeing off of uh, local reports is we're quickly falling into, and I don't know what else to say, but it's falling into fascism. 1-5. And
Fascism, yeah,
on the
yeah.
CDEI scale, it's enforced. There's no denying it.
Mm-hmm.
It's enforced both ideologically.
Enforced
uh,
government.
yeah, and enforce government. You do what we tell you to do, and you are not welcome in our country, type of a thing. So there's no representation for all of the people. It's clearly not a republic. In Australia, I'm sure Arthur could have a few things to say about that. Australia is not an easy country to live in either. Go ahead, Arthur. What were you going to say, Quentin?
Mm. Well, I was going to say, and I think a lot of people think that, looking at a republic versus a democracy, I want you to notice that LRH even makes the distinction, even as a republic being at 3.0 and a democracy being at 2.5. This is really interesting, right? And 2.5 is what, conservatism? And
Yeah,
so this is really interesting because when you start to understand, like, I think a lot of people think that we are a republic because we elect people, right? Well, again, it goes in the interest of the people or the interest of those that are leading versus those that are being led. And so a democracy, listen to this. A democracy is a form of government in which political power is vested in the people. This is different.
right.
And then it says a system of government by which the whole population or all the eligible members of a state typically through elected representatives. So where government is done by the whole population or eligible, I'm using air quotes, you can't see me on the podcast, but I'm using air quotes, eligible members of a state. Now catch this. When you're looking at a democracy, this is where you find what we have like electoral college, the electoral college. Those are really the eligible members of the state. Okay.
That's right. That's
Okay,
right.
those are the eligible members of the state. So when you have a true republic is the supreme power rests with the people,
Mhm.
and the elected officials represent the interest of the people. In other words, what the people want. A democracy would be where the power is vested in the people. Isn't that interesting? So, what does it mean to be vested when the power is vested in the people? So, vested means, get this, vested means to be conferred or bestowed upon.
Wink, wink.
Conferred or bestowed. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm winking, guys. So, now in a democracy, power is conferred or bestowed upon the people. Well, who conferred it? Who bestowed it?
Mhm.
Some eligible members, some governing body, some authoritarian system that said, you know what, we're going to give the people some power. We're going to give the people a voice. Okay.
Mhm.
And so they bestow They bestow power upon the people. This is a democracy. And then say you can come back and elect who you want to tell us what you say, what you want, what you're thinking. Right?
Right.
That's a democracy. Now it feels good and it sounds good. And America is the freest country in the world. And boo, 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 boo. But catch this, somebody had to bestow that power to the people. Somebody had to vest that power upon the people for then the people to come back and say, this is what we want, this is what we need.
Mhm.
I just think
Right.
it's interesting.
Yeah, and it's interesting to note that um, in this last election, uh, part of what was happening is that many, many, many people that were not part of the country were brought in, allowed in, and bestowed the right to vote, even though they hadn't been naturalized citizens. This is what's been said. I can either confirm or
Reports.
deny. Yeah, I can either confirm or deny this, but
Allegedly.
allegedly that this is what happened. And then you look at where it's at now is now you're having this huge Gestapo like push to remove these people from the rolls of eligible voters because you have the haves and you have the have-nots in this so-called two-party system that to me it doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you have the electoral college. And in so doing, the electoral college, everybody votes, every citizen who is a registered voter in the United States, as this in this example, once you're registered to vote, you can vote. But the thing is that even though you vote, the electoral college is the one that decides who
Yes.
gets into office, and that means that so many coins go in this particular area, so many coins go into this particular area, and now you have this wrestling going on of, well, the term gerrymandering is going on where they're changing the lines that benefits the electoral college
Right.
based off of where these people live. So many representatives get so many votes in the electoral college. It doesn't really matter who votes the common man's vote. It only matters how many people are in this arbitrary circle saying who this is. And now they literally, and I'm not going to use any party names. I'm sure our
Yeah.
listeners already know about this, but one party is forcing the other party to be followed by police and escorted out, and they had to sign a document in the Texas, uh, I believe it's the Texas House, and that particular party could not leave without being followed by police, and they were going to be followed the whole time, and some of them decided to stay behind and not be told what to do. This is how far this has come. That is not a democracy. Okay,
Right.
and they were successful in changing the lines that affect the electoral college, which will then affect the 2026 11. That is not democracy.
Yeah. And I think we're making this point because when you understand what's happening, you understand that number one, LRH talked about this years ago, that LRH wrote about this in Excalibur in the late 1930s. Okay, so literally almost 100 years ago now, because
Mhm.
we're about to hit 1930 now, in 2025,
2030, yeah.
2026. Yeah. So 90 years ago, this was already discussed and spotted. It was spotted that this
Mhm.
political scale. And
Mhm.
what I love about being an independent Scientologist is because we see these things and that we know how to know, we know that we can now understand what's going on, and you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to have anxiety and foolishness. You don't have to have all this stuff going on because you can spot what's going on and you can govern yourself. Hear me, you can govern yourself accordingly. This is self-determinism,
Mhm.
right? That
Mhm.
even in a political system wherever it be on the scale, whether it be a democracy, a social democracy, a fascist government, or a communist government, that you can operate with a level of self-determinism that allows you to move, live, and have your being in a certain way. And so now catch this. We talked about a democracy where, again, there's a difference between a republic and a democracy.
Mm-hmm.
The republic is supreme power of the by the people of the people. A democracy is eligible members of a state that get to make uh, 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 credence or make some kind of judgments on your behalf, right? A social democracy moves you down into like more of a welfare state. It's more of a where the parties or the powers that be get to try to support or move monies and resources and things like that towards what they feel is the right thing to be pushing in the society, right? So this is where you get laws being changed and shifted. This is where you get certain systems and parts of your government being defunded or whatever, because now you have a social democracy where we want to do what's best for you. Okay,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
we're gonna do what's best for you people because you don't know how to govern yourself. You
Right.
don't know what you're doing, so we're gonna do what's best for you. That's a welfare state, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I say welfare, get your mind off of a check coming in the mail. That's a part of it because that's a control mechanism. But get, get your mind more into the idea of how they're doing government, how they're doing politics, and you'll see that it's on a low vibrational tone scale. It's 2.0.
Yeah.
It's 2.0 on the tone scale where
Yeah.
they want you to be placid and bored. That's boredom. 2.0 is boredom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they want you to be silenced. They want you to be drugged and marijuana out your mind so you can't fight back.
Well, and that's what you see in the U.S. with the pandemics of painkillers and all of
Yeah,
these things that
opioids and stuff.
the opioids type of a thing. Here in South Africa, all they've got to do to get somebody to vote for a particular party and whatever that party stands for is get them a Streetwise 3 or Streetwise 4 from KFC. I'm not kidding you.
Yep.
I'm not kidding you. Four
Same thing
pieces
in
of chicken and
Philippines.
some coleslaw, and we got your vote. And they'll tell
Yep.
KFC ahead of time, we're going to be ordering a lot of chicken. and that's that's not good. I was just talking to my son last night, and he was telling me because he goes into people's homes to do installations of something. I'll just leave it vague, but he's an installer, and he's been doing this for several years, and he gets a better view than I did of how people live because he goes into these people's homes, and he says you would not believe the average state of a person's home these days. He says I
Yeah.
can't believe the state of disarray in which people live, and they still want a security system. And
Hmm.
he's seeing the same thing I saw when I was in the States at how quickly the United States was falling into a third world country situation. And he said it himself before I ever mentioned it myself that it's falling from social democracy into fascism because you're dealing with, well, what he says, what LRH says in this reference is 1.5 to 2.0, they're going to fight with each other quite a bit. And
Yeah.
this is what's happening, and it's affecting the economy, it's affecting the laws, it's affecting who gets a right to vote, that type of a thing. And LRH talks about in the lecture that we were going over, uh creating a third dynamic, united survival action clubs. He talks about this as far as it has to do with not the people that are representing the people, but the people themselves.
Hmm. Yeah. And so when we see this, and again, a social democracy, and again, when you look at the tone scale and where it falls on the tone scale, it's so blatantly clear. A welfare state equals boredom, equals people not working, people not being as productive,
Mhm.
equals people being drugged or drunk out of their minds, right? And when I say drugged, I'm not just talking about street drugs or whatever, because I don't want you to think of like, I'm not on them drugs, I'm not doing all that. But what are you eating? What kind of chemicals are put in your food to make you more docile? What kind of chemicals are put in your food to make you addicted? Sugars and different things of that nature. So all of this is a part of the equation, right? And so social democracy at 2.0, and at the writing of this particular reference that LRH gave in 1957, he said it is true that no government on planet Earth is above social democracy in 1937. I'm sorry, 1957. And so since then, how many governments have fallen on the tone scale? Because he says it's a dwindling spiral. How many governments have fallen on the tone scale down into fascism, right? Fascism is a populist political philosophy. Populist, which means it says that it exalts nation and often race above the individual. It exalts the nation above the individual. It's usually centralized power in an autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader. Now, catch this: a fascist, a fascist government is not the same as a dictatorship, but it's a dictatorial leader, right? It's an autocratic, which means there's a group of people
You dictate,
that govern.
right?
That govern, yeah, it's a group of people, and whether they're the billionaire class, whether they're the technocratic class, whether they're whatever, there's a group of people that are dictating or governing autocratic group rule, and there's a group of people that govern for you how you're going to live, how you're going to be, how you're going to move. And
Right.
so the nation is exalted above the individuals. This is really interesting to hear. And again, I'm giving you this not to say anything about any political system or whatever. It just is what it is. And when you look at it from this light, you're seeing this like, oh, I see what y'all doing. I see where it's coming from. I see what it is. And you can kind of exteriorize, hear me, you can exteriorize from it because you can as is it. You can make this, you can see it time, place, form, and event. You can see it for what it is, and you can as is it from your own personal universe. I'm telling you what I practice. I'm telling you what I live. Okay. You can exteriorize yourself from it all and start to move in a different way. And as independent Scientologists, we kind of position ourselves to be able to do that. One thing I love about being able to remote auditing.
Mm-hmm.
I love being able to sit in the comfort and the security of my home, wherever I place myself, right? My space, and I love to be able to audit. I love to be able to get on the cans. I love to be able to do what I need to do as an independent Scientologist. Well, I don't have to be necessarily location specific. This is a really, really good way of kind of exteriorizing yourself out of the matrix, as it were, out of the system of things, and putting yourself in a position where you can start to govern yourself more accordingly.
Right. Uh, and this comes from let's see here. I'm trying to find where it comes. This isn't from LRH. It says the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing, which
Okay.
expresses the idea that oppression or injustice can only succeed when people of good conscience remain silent or inactive, allowing wrongdoing to take root and flourish. It's misapplied to Thomas Jefferson or Edmund Burke. It's not clear who said
I'm
it, but
sorry.
it is still obviously true. Uh, and that comes down to what LRH says here about IQ, and auditing improves a person's IQ, understanding the study text, improves a person's IQ. He says, and this is in the reference creating a third dynamic united survival action from 1957, late
Mhm.
30 December. He says, you just raise everybody's IQ a few percent. Why then? There they go. They'll all be all right. The fallacy of trying to educate people whose IQ and ability to receive is not up to being educated is that one does not educate them. They are not smart enough to be educated. A further step has to be taken. You have to raise everybody's IQ so they can be educated. But the funny part of it is you raise their IQ, they won't be educated in any stylized fashion. They will start to make up their own minds about some things. And only then can you have a democracy. Only then can you have a government, a third dynamic on the basis of a democracy. You would have it if all of its citizens were able to, and this is the key point, if
Yes.
all the citizens were able to understand and appreciate the issues before the government. And he says, I think you agree with that. Unless you do that, you're not going to have anything but a totalitarian state. And what we're talking about here is we're not just talking about the United States. We're talking about the
Right.
planet as a whole.
Hmm.
He says, now the way things are going, if we just force draft education in on people and so on and keep kicking them out and making them afraid, we will cut their IQ down. Now, if we keep cutting their IQ down and they become less and less able to confront, key concept, less able to confront, why, of course, they become less and less able to be a country. And sooner or later, some big fellow on a white horse, he used to ride a white horse, I don't know what he rides now, has to walk in and wave a sword and get a totalitarian regime. I think he probably waves a Cadillac now or a Ford or something of the sort, he says.
Or a
But
golden toilet.
right, or a golden toilet. But these chaps who would give us totalitarianism themselves usually cannot face or confront problems. So totalitarianism has never been a solution. It never
Yeah.
will be a solution, no matter how much we may begin to hear it whispered from here on out that what we need is a strong man with a bunch of slaves.
Yeah. I think this is so poignant, and I'm so glad that we're having this conversation because it really is to be empowering and not to be salacious or shocking or whatever. I just think that and if any of you have any comments or anything that you want to say in the comments down below, please feel free, and we'll definitely respond. But I think the idea here is that when when you don't educate your citizens properly, or probably a better way of saying it is when you're not doing anything to raise the IQ of the people, right? IQ is intelligence quotient. That means that the aggregate, right? Them all coming together and saying the general IQ of our society is such and so. When you're not doing anything to raise the IQ of the people, that you're keeping them in a non they're not able to understand the issues before the government per LRH. They're not able to understand the issues of the government before the government, and therefore you can never have a true democracy. You can never have it because that's not what they're thinking about. They're thinking about how they're gonna pay their light bill. They're thinking about how they're gonna feed their kids. They think about how they're gonna get their medication for Big Mama. That's the biggest issue before the people. So you don't have a true third dynamic. You don't have a true group because the individual is so interiorized on their own stuff. I hope you get this. And so when that happens, the being collapses, degrades down to a point where I can't even think beyond my own junk. I can't even think beyond my own stresses and my own concerns of the day. And so when they can't think beyond, you can go buy them a chicken meal and get their vote. You can give them a check, in the mail for $600 and get their vote. This is what happens because the person is so interiorized and shrunk down that
Mm-hmm.
they can't be bigger, broader, and have a true third dynamic.
Right. Due to the installed present time problems, and
Mm-hmm.
that comes down to economy, and this is not a American centric thing alone. It is a global
Yeah.
issue. where you have to fight to survive. And 9 times out of 10, the present time problem that I'm handling for the PC is I need more money. I need to
Mm-hmm.
survive better. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and that is the present time problem is you keep the gerbil in the wheel. Well, you're too busy to educate yourself on things. If you're an adult and you're living for yourself and you don't have time because you got to work all the time in order to get by. And even if you're getting by, you have to deal with all the myriad difficulties of owning your own business, dealing with business partners, all that stuff. And that's
Yeah.
created through from a much bigger source than any one government. You know, I mean, we're looking at banking in general and why everybody has to have so much money to survive, and if you don't have a home, you get put in jail. That is a huge PTP, and it is something that is ongoing in present time at this very moment across the
Mhm.
United States, and that's not okay. So
Right.
if people can't get educated, can't survive, they're forced into making uninformed decisions about things they don't understand because if they've a true republic, a true democracy isn't baffling them with bullshit. They're dazzling them with brilliance in their representation of the people.
Mm-hmm.
And
And that's how you get them.
yeah, and that's how you get them. And the ideological differences in one country to the next, or one country or one region to the next, that it doesn't belong. What people believe shouldn't have any bearing on anything. It should be accepted that people have different viewpoints, but we've gotten down to a point to where these different viewpoints ideologically are causing tremendous amounts of problems, especially, I mean, just in yours and my lifetime, let alone, I mean, you look in the 50s when LRH wrote the I did this lecture, we were in the middle of the Cold War,
Yeah.
Red Scare and all of that stuff. And it doesn't belong. And that it also comes down to skin color and orientation of where you live and all of that. And we're
Yeah.
all pink on the inside. We're all human beings. We're all thetans driving a body, and we need to get to that point. And that comes right back to what he says about education, which is why we're doing this podcast.
Right. And why having an online college, why having an online course room allows you to tap in anytime, anywhere. And I want you to get how valuable this is and how AOGP as an organization is really positioning itself for greatness in the future and to empower the people, empower you to be great, to raise your IQ with knowledge and training, to raise your IQ with study tech, to raise your IQ with ethics tech, to raise your IQ with all of this stuff that we're doing. All of this stuff, getting you in session to move all the mental mass out of the way so that you can actually be a better being, right? LRA says it here. He says in the same lecture, he says, now, if the mathematics professors, the physics professors of the country have not so been far able to create geniuses and educate people, why do they think that another appropriation, talking about money, is going to? The solution is not more money, more hours, more education, or more government. The solution is obviously better citizens.
Mm-hmm.
That's the solution. And what we have as independent Scientologists is online remote auditing. We have online course room. We have an online community. We have all the stuff in place to allow you to be a better citizen of the world, a better global being, and you have the ability to then become better for wherever you land your feet. I want you to
Mm-hmm.
get this, that wherever you go, when I go out in my community, even here in a foreign country, barely speaking the native language, when I go out, you can see the people get happier. I kid you not. People will smile. The guy who rests downstairs in the building, he will literally get up and smile. Hey, boss, how you doing, boss? Da-da-da. And it's only because there's a better being that's present. I'm no different, body wise than any other person walking around with 5 fingers and 5 toes. And yet the beingness is being presented differently. The beingness is showing up in a certain way. And this is how we live as independent Scientologists. You have the ability to shift your environment and change your sphere of influence across your dynamics. It's a beautiful life.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that you have access to all of this material that we're using in this podcast to go in and inform yourself. I'm not even going to go as far as to say educate yourself, because we're all peers here. And if you can illuminate yourself on these issues and understand that you're dealing with a planet that has over 8 billion people and rapidly rising, with reactive minds, and how those reactive minds are going to react against other people, overts,
Yeah,
motivators, and
man.
withholds, and all that stuff. And you have the playbook on what's happening. You're going to be a lot better off, because you can't be the adverse effect of something you understand. And
That's right.
it's a very, very fine line for me, and I'm going to speak for the both of you, that we are not partisan to any of the
Right.
things that are going on this planet. Staying out of politics is of the utmost importance. You don't want to get involved in it, because it's groupthink, and LRH talks about that in Keeping Scientology Working #1. And that's why a benevolent monarchy, as he mentions in the politics reference that we read at the beginning of the show, is where
Benign
you
monarch.
benign, yeah, benign
Hmm.
monarchy is, and to the degree benevolent. Um,
Sure.
you you have one individual who has a great idea, and he's going to do something about it, and it affects everybody, similar to what you were just talking about there in KL, in Malaysia, where the people are happy because they're able to contribute to society, they're able to survive, they have aesthetics, they have they want for nothing, as long as their morale is high, and their morale is high to the degree that they can produce. Production is the basis of morale. When you get into a
Mhm.
welfare state, that's where you get, well, just send me my check, and then I'm going to go down to 7-Eleven or Quick Trip and pick up, or Wawa, and pick up a 24 pack of Coors Light, and there's no production, so they're unhappy. And
Right.
what happens to people when they get bored? Their ethics go out, whether they're at the bottom of the pay scale and they're on welfare, or whatever it is, government subsidies, and they're getting government cheese, or they have all the money in the world and they want for nothing, and their ethics go out even more. And that's why you have, quote unquote, the Illuminati. And it's not a matter of whether you believe that these individuals with more than the average bear's number of suppressive tendencies are going to
Mm.
do and are doing what they're doing. It is a matter of they have the money to do what they're doing, and they believe in the causes that they believe in. And even LRH says, even I have a hard time confronting evil. But you got
Mm.
to confront it, and that comes with IQ. And you get IQ. This is where this is all going. Your intelligence quotient, which is an arbitrary, but it's a gauge of your intelligence, your problem solving skills, your ability to look at things for what they are. That comes from illuminating and educating yourself on these principles, and getting a big macro exterior viewpoint, getting on course, getting auditing, so your awareness level comes up, that you can go, hey, I'm not confronting this. This is evil. What's happening?
Right.
Everybody has the right to survive and be happy and be self-determined. Everybody on this planet. And there's more than enough room for everyone, as long as they're allowed to do that.
Yeah. This is really good. And I think that taking a big look at this and confronting this conversation, which we have never done before, I think is really, really valuable for people who wanted to just know um, why things are the way they are, why things are going on that are going on, and what I can do about it as an independent Scientologist,
Mhm.
how to kind of move through this thing in a certain way. So I feel very, very good about knowing that at least now there's some awareness around it. And do me a favor, like when you guys get a chance, let's talk. Comment in the comments below. Comment on the college. Reach out to us and let us know what your thoughts are. We just had somebody who wants to talk about these things, and they booked a time to talk about some stuff going on in their own world. So you feel free to do that. You know, book a time and let's talk about what's going on so that you can get the help that you need. And hopefully raise to a place where you can operate in self-determinism and maybe, like I said earlier, be exterior to the stuff that's going on around you, and can live a better life because of it.
Yep. Look, don't listen. And that's what we're trying to help you do. And love your fellow Satan, your fellow man, your fellow woman, your fellow children. And that's all it comes down to is you can't survive on your own. It takes a third dynamic to do it, and a fourth dynamic. And
A united survival club. Ain't
that's
that
right.
something he
A
called it?
united survival club. So
That's what Ellery's called it.
yeah, I'd like everybody to just take some time and look at this from an exterior viewpoint and not have a bias because of political affiliation, because bias is the problem. And we're all here on the same big blue and green rock, and the way out is the way through, and survival is to the degree that you're doing everything you can to aid your own dynamics, and that includes everybody else. So for
Hmm.
Quentin, Artie has been in and out due to the internet reception
Yeah,
on his way
so
to
sorry.
that's
Yeah.
okay, on his way to Quentin to get to doing his TRs with Quentin for his pro TRs. So with no more preamble on everything, take a look at this, get in touch with us, let's have a dialogue on YouTube and talk about this in the comments. Also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and a slew of other places you can listen to this podcast. Thank you for being here, and namaste, and we love you. Bye bye.
Peace.
Bye bye.